Hello everyone and welcome to a new video. Today we're going to look at why Linus Tech Tips is wrong about the M1 Max Pro. I think I'm going to title this Why Max Tech is wrong about the M1 Max MacBook Pro. I think that's going to be my title for this video because oh my god, this misleading biased opinion is just ridiculous. The fact that he's criticizing a source he did not even watch it's painful. So this video is for everyone who is not as into tech and cannot see through the bullshit quite immediately, because there's a lot of people watching this and they think, oh, Max is a genius, he's right, duh. I'm gonna shed some light into it and we'll basically show you why Linus Tech Tips video is absolutely fine and Max video is, oh boy, where do you even start? Alright, so here we go.
We're looking at something much more akin to the RTX 3050 Ti.
Really, Anthony? A 3050 Ti?
Yes, Max, I realize this seems offensive to you, but sadly, Anthony is pretty much on the mark there. Just because the media encoder cannot uplift the performance to 3080 Ti levels in gaming doesn't make it less true. That's just what it is. The only time the M1 can even get to that performance tier is in video editing, I guess. That's about it. And even then I would argue it doesn't really, but I'll get into that a little later.
Well guys, it has been long enough, and even though we absolutely love Linus Tech Tips, we love Anthony's coverage.
So I will get into this later as well, but this is a good summary as to why nobody who is about to get into the professional business should ever buy an M1 Max. Just put it out there.
We have to say something because Linus Tech Tips is wrong about the M1 Max MacBook Pros. Now I'm going to show you guys some specifics, some details, and what is going on with their coverage, which, although it is amazing,
I find it ironic you actually want to talk about the coverage despite you obviously not even having watched it completely, which going to be very obvious very soon.
very nice, very detailed. It really has a sort of a skew to it, and I'll show you guys what I mean. It started out when they released their first video on the M1 Pro about a month ago, and while it had a nice title and some good info, there are a couple things that seem just to be cherry-picked.
It's quite ironic that you talk about cherry picking because that's literally what you're doing, and you're literally criticizing Linus Tech Tips for not cherry picking, which again is quite ironic.
And some results that probably should not have been shown.
Why would you ever hide a result? Just because it's not in your favor does not mean you shouldn't show it, because even if it's circumstantial, it should still be shown, especially for those people who have this specific, scenario. Why shouldn't that be known to them? Just because it puts the MacBook in a bad light does not mean it should not be shown. Just saying.
Making the M1 Pro look a lot worse than it did. The first but minor thing was the inclusion of a high-end AMD 16-core PC with an RTX 3090 on a ton of the graphs, especially the...
Well, the reason they do that is just to showcase the quote-unquote top-tier PC performance you can actually get, which makes a lot of sense since the MacBook, the M1 Pros and M1 Max are actually quite close in that price range. Actually, the M1 Max, even with the GPU shortage and ridiculous prices, you could probably still get a PC like that actual setup cheaper than the M1 Max. So it makes absolute sense to actually put that PC in as well for those who want to have the top tier performance as a reference or actually consider buying it themselves.
Ones where the M1 Pro has a good lead, so it doesn't look like it's that good, but of course we did have a G14 laptop, which is more
Side note, when it comes to Geekbench, it's very, very biased towards M1. Obviously, he does not mention this because Max is he's basically an Apple shill, so he will defend and, mislead as much as he possibly can. But for those who don't know, Geekbench is very, very, very biased towards any Mac OS specific system, and this has been proven, or rather can be proven relatively quickly. I've done it in another video. For those who want to see it themselves, go into Geekbench, look for benchmarks, and look at the top benchmarks. You will notice that there are actual Windows PCs running Mac OS, which we refer to as a Hackintosh. And this exact same system running Windows scores way lower despite having the same exact specs. The reason for that is obviously because Geekbench is very heavily, macOS bias. Just putting that out. So basically, Geekbench as a cross-platform benchmark is pretty fucking terrible. Even in itself, Geekbench is pretty bad at multi-threaded loads anyways, since you can literally find 12-core CPUs that outperform 24-core CPUs because they have the 12-core ones have slightly better IPC, again making Geekbench quite a terrible benchmark in itself. Pointing out what it is. Again, this kind of goes for every benchmark. I mean, usually you want multiple benchmark to make, an image. Don't just base it on one benchmark. Don't ever do that because benchmarks always have a certain bias to them.
Competitive. Now that's not that big of a deal, but then we start looking at some of these benchmarks. The first one here is Handbrake.
Now he's going to perfectly demonstrate what an Apple shill does. Basically, he sees something he doesn't like, he will immediately abort mission. He does not give a shit about the actual, content. He will then he sees something he doesn't like, instant, I need to defend this. And this is one of these moments where Max is going to embarrass himself quite a lot.
Showing off compressing and encoding a 1080p file with some really odd results that kind of had us scratching our heads. Why are the M1 Pro MacBooks taking way longer to encode this file than even the M1 Max, and then clearly showing off how the Windows machines are superior? Clearly there is something very wrong with this if an M1 for $1,000 is 3 to 4 times faster. Now thankfully they didn't.
Max, if you had bothered to actually watch the video, you wouldn't have embarrassed yourself like this. So let's do this for you so your audience can actually figure out why this is so embarrassing.
When we turn on hardware encoding, why is this MacBook so slow? Okay, it looks like Apple's video toolbox has some issues with the new media engine right now. So unfortunately, these results are unusable. But I'm including them here because this is something you might run into if you pick one of these puppies up.
If only you had watched the video, Max. If only you would actually watch the source you're trying to criticize. Oh, vey. Let's proceed.
Just leave it at Handbrake. They also tested out compressor, which also means that they could not include the Windows computers in this graph. But here you see it's 3 to 4 times faster, showing that Handbrake is clearly not working, but also that the standard M1 is about the same performance, showing that Apple is in fact just focusing on 4K and 8K with these new chips. Now another thing, yeah, it's 1080p. Most people are doing 4K for a while, but what's up with the 1.2 megabit per second?
Why is that a problem? I never understood why this is a problem. Like, yeah, it's 1.2 megabyte target bitrate. Guess what? Linus Tech Tips doesn't really want to sit the entire day just exporting or encoding a dumbass video. They don't really want to do that. So what they do is just, take 1.2 megabyte per second and then get a result that pictures what's going on. So I don't really know why you're even complaining about this.
Second bitrate, that is way worse than even YouTube video quality. And why not include maybe Premiere Pro, which most Windows people use, or DaVinci Resolve?
Max, it's getting ridiculous. Why didn't they include Adobe Premiere? Well, maybe because of this.
Shabby, with the 10-core M1 Pro beating out the Zephyrus in both the shortened render, which is ridiculously good. Adobe Creative Cloud mostly runs in Rosetta as well, and unfortunately that means that either Puget Bench will often crash, or in the case of the few available Apple Silicon versions of these apps, simply not work. We do have photo...
That's why, Max. That's why. Watch the source you're trying to criticize. It's a pro tip. Usually helps you not getting yourself embarrassed as much. Oh well, let's proceed.
Not just compressor and Handbrake, which is not working. So I went ahead and tested it myself.
I already have a massive problem with this. Because what is this supposed to tell me? Okay, so you're encoding a 1080p clip in H264. What's the bitrate? Do you tell me the bitrate? No? Is there any editing? I don't know. What are we looking at? You clearly also just did not enable GPU encoding on the laptops, which, you know, head scratch. Not sure why you don't do that. I guess you don't wanna. I have a shitty AMD GPU, which is far inferior to NVIDIA in terms of encoding, and I encode way faster than 15 minutes on a 22-minute clip. So I know for a fact you're currently using the CPU on the Windows PCs. I'm not sure why you do this, but it's weird. Why are you misleading? I don't know if you did it on purpose or if you're just actually too dumb to actually, use proper settings. Whatever the case may be, I don't like this picture. You might as well just enable GPU and actually look, okay, oops, it's relatively close suddenly. Just putting it out there.
And it took 2 minutes and 19 seconds into 5950, meaning that it even beat out the 5950X with the RTX 3090.
Whoa. Hold the phone here. Are you comparing Handbrake encoding to DaVinci Resolve? What are you? No. You cannot just take a random clip, a random 22-minute clip, right? And just expect it, and also use a different kind of software and then compare it to another software with another clip. That doesn't work. It doesn't work like that, dude. Okay, so I guess I will counter your Geekbench score with my Cinebench score. My Cinebench score is higher, therefore my PC is better. That's literally what you did. That makes 0 sense. Don't even go there, man. You do not have to demonstrate your incompetence in terms of actual encoding or rather benchmarking. We get it. You don't understand how things work. We get it, Max. But seriously, you cannot compare a DaVinci Resolve result with a different video to a fucking Handbrake result with a different video. You can't do that. You just can't. No. Bad, Max. Bad. Go in the corner. Sit there and think what you have done.
Desktop graphics card, which was using.
I mean, at this point, I'm not even sure if he's trolling or pranking us or whatever. It's a little early or late for an April Fool's, but this is embarrassing.
Handbrake without any compatibility issues. So that was just kind of showing us maybe.
AMD PC? What? So here you turn it on, or what am I looking at here? Okay, so you can code a bitrate. Hello? Can I get a target bitrate? What you gonna render in quality, like in quality mode in Windows and performance on Mac, or the other way around? What am I looking at here? I need feedback. This doesn't really give me anything. I'm just sitting here confused, wondering what exactly are you showing us? Because I do not know.
I don't know. There's some benchmark cherry picking. Now, along with that, let's just skip to some games. They test.
Oh God. Why would you skip on games on M1? I don't understand the trend of people wanting to test games on the M1. Look at this compatibility list. There's only a handful of games, for fuck's sake. Like, we got like what, 9 native M1 support games or something like that. Maybe a little more. We got a handful of games. Maybe under 1% of all games will actually run on this on the M1 in the first place, because they require the game to have some sort of OpenGL or Vulkan implementation in order to have an easy conversion from whatever API they're using, like if it's OpenGL whatever, to Metal, or maybe it just uses OpenGL directly. I do not know. Whatever the case is, most games are using DirectX, and you can't play that on the Mac. So why bother? Such a small amount of games. I don't even know why Linus Tech Tips bothered, and why they didn't mention this as well. I mean, they should mention, oh, by the way, basically 99 point something % of the games that exist will not run on the Mac M1 period. You would have to do some weird Windows cross install, which would probably run even worse, some shit like that. I mean, it just hurts. I don't want to hear about M1 in gaming. It's obvious the M1 is shit in gaming. It's for obvious reasons. Not only is it basically 3050 Ti levels, but also the problem is it has to emulate on top of that, which is it's just bad performance. Don't use M1 for gaming. It's just not a gaming device. It's like trying to use a fork for, I don't know, eating grass outside or something. It's just, don't do that. Okay, that was a very bad analogy. Terrible. Actually terrible. Let's take a knife and cutting your grass outside. That's basically what you're trying to do here. Just don't do it. It's not good.
Tested out a couple games, but unfortunately, all of the ones they tested and the other benchmarks aren't really optimized. They have
no shit, they're not optimized. Because game developers don't want to optimize for a platform that's significantly worse, like significantly less existent in the actual market. Why would I invest so much resources to make an implementation onto a system that my target group doesn't use in the first place? That's just waste of resources. The M1 will never, and I repeat, never have proper gaming optimization in a widespread manner. Only a couple games will basically run, and these games will have some sort of Vulkan implementation or something where the conversion or rather the implementation of the Metal API on ARM instruction set is going to be, relatively easy. We have some sort of, I don't know, mobile port or whatever the hell you have. Just make it easy. You will not expect, like, I don't know, Civ 6 to actually, have M1 implementation, because why would they bother? Why would they bother? There's no reason to do that. It's just waste of money at this point. You will never see Cyberpunk running on the M1 without any type of emulation overlay or running some weird Windows installation. It's just not gonna happen. It's just not going to happen because there's no profit in it. And even then, the performance will just be like, eh. So don't go there, man. Don't. Even Linus Tech Tips. Also, why bother? Why fucking bother? Just mention it runs a handful of games. All right, that's it. End of story.
Clear limitations that they mentioned themselves. For example, Rosetta was slowing stuff down. So you see there's really no improvement as your graphics forgot to.
Okay, so he's basically complaining about why they didn't use World of Warcraft, and I can answer that question relatively quickly. Because World of Warcraft is such an old game that there is a problem with these types of games. They run on everything. It's actually really hard to, get a proper World of Warcraft benchmark. Because the game is just capped at 200 frames, that's it. It's like, yeah, sure, it'll run 200 frames, and on the M1 it'll run, I don't know, like maybe 100 something frames. It's just, it's misleading at best, because it'll think, oh, the M1 is so close, but if you had uncapped the FPS and you actually let the game run at whatever, it'll probably run at 800 frames or some shit like that. It's just, it's a really big yikes using World of Warcraft as any type of benchmark. It is a game that runs on a fucking potato. That's just what it is. It's an old game running on an old engine, so it's not really that surprising.
Run it, and some of the other benchmarks clearly had issues. They weren't optimized. There was other stuff. We decided, hey, let's let it go. They said they spent over $30,000 on.
They probably did.
Max, that they have new content coming up, and this video is posted 3 weeks after the launch of these machines, the actual ship date. So maybe they just tested out the wrong programs, and it was a total fluke. Well,
what do you mean fluke? They tested. There was not a single program which wasn't worth testing. These are all programs that are being widespread used, except for maybe Geekbench. It's just worthless. It's honestly just a worthless benchmark. But stuff like like the games they showed, and they wanted to show Photoshop, Handbrake, all these kind of things. That's perfectly valid. That's what people use. That's just what it is. Just because you don't like it doesn't make it less valuable. I mean, what? You just want to use optimize things. That's just dumb. That's a dumb mindset because people don't want to use specific things. They want to use the things they're familiar with. They don't want to change everything up because their shitty M1 doesn't run it properly. I mean, come on.
Well, this is what happened just recently. They released their full video on the M1 Max high-end chip almost a month after that, and we were super excited to check it out. All the new benchmarks and testing, they do an amazing job. We are huge fans.
You say they do an amazing job, but you can't even be bothered to actually watch their videos while criticizing it. Good lord.
Fans of Anthony as well, but stuff got a little bit weird, even more so. Look at this. Of course.
Oh, God, no. Every time he complains, it's just, Max, you're literally complaining about the fact that they don't cherry pick. That's your literal complaint, and I cannot believe you're doing this so blatantly. You're blatantly complaining about the fact that they don't cherry pick. How are you getting away with this? How is your comment section not blowing up telling you, Max, what the hell are you talking about? Max, are you mental? What's going on?
Of course, we have that same high-end Windows PC system in pretty much all the benchmarks where it does well, but compared to the 14-inch laptops, we have a 16-inch Zephyrus now with a much better cooling system.
Look, I mean, I get it. It bothers you because it's not only much cheaper, but it's also larger, and it's just something you have to deal with. I mean, that's a realistic option. Like, if you consider something like an M1 Max, I mean, Linus Tech Tips should honestly just have stepped up. They could have just taken the Alienware, with OLED screen and desktop CPU. They should have probably taken that thing and be like, here we go. Let it smoke the M1. It's still gonna be cheaper, or even go a step further and go for a Clevo. Or, the MSI, the desktop version they have too. They could have went that route and it would still be cheaper and just utterly annihilate the M1. But they chose a, similar form factor, just larger. But the thing is, you're bothered right now because it still destroys the M1 in many, many applications, while being much cheaper. And that's what really annoys you. It doesn't annoy you that, it's larger and I have a reason for hating it, but you don't. That's the problem. You just hate the fact that it is larger, has better specs, better cooling, and can actually sustain the performance better. That's your actual complaint. And I'm sorry, but that's literally the option people have. Linus Tech Tips is just giving a laptop out there that gives people an option. And they're taking a mid-range one as well with the 3060. They didn't even go overkill. They could have easily taken a 3080, laptop and, compared it to the M1 Max. And it will still be cheaper and it would still fucking annihilate the other one. It's just what it is. But Linus Tech Tips wants to, picture a much more, practical image where they say, oh, look, you don't have to spend that much money to actually get the same performance. That's their point. So, yeah, just because you don't like it, just because you personally do not like the idea of the M1 not being as glorious as you want it to be, doesn't mean Linus Tech Tips is not right. It's just what it is. Live with it.
System instead of the 14-inch that they just used in the previous video which would be much more fair. We have some.
I like how you somehow think it's fair. I mean, they still use a laptop that's considerably cheaper, and somehow it's still unfair in your mind. It's ridiculous. It's actually ridiculous that you think this is somehow unfair. What the hell, man?
CPU benchmarks which show off the performance and how some of the other systems are really capable, but none of the real-world testing for some reason. I'll get back.
Newsflash: Cinebench is basically a benchmark for Cinema 4D, as far as I know. So it kind of is a real world, benchmark in that sense. So I don't know what you're talking about.
To that, they add 3D rendering using Redshift and show off how it gets smoked by this 3060 system.
Yes, correct. Newsflash: the graphics card in the Zephyrus is faster. Wow, what a big surprise. Nobody is surprised who actually knows about tech, because that's just what it is. Yes, And just because you don't like it doesn't make it much. It doesn't make it less true. People who use Cinema 4D, Redshift, or just Cinema 4D, they will be better off with a Zephyrus M16. That's just fact. Whether you like it or not, that's just how it is. I'm sorry, dude, but that's just reality.
And the fact that it is just so much cheaper than the MacBook Pro.
Yeah, it hurts, doesn't it? That hurts.
In a laptop that costs a little over half as much at retail.
Followed by Geekbench 5's GPU test, which even on day one, we knew that it's not properly running and showing.
This is kind of ironic considering that the Geekbench is actually so optimized for, their Apple chips and just generally just Apple operating system. I kind of find it hilarious, but it is what it is.
Scores that are not accurate, but unfortunately, we didn't get any other benchmarks that are.
Wait a second, I didn't read this. The GB compute is too short in bursts, and the GPU isn't ramping up to peak frequencies. Just ignore it. What in the fuck? Wait, what? Okay, that is funny. So if you have any load that actually needs short bursts, apparently the M1 will just suck ass. That's gonna be it in a nutshell. Oh my god. I suppose this is actually Apple's way of sort of controlling the what's it called, the power delivery and generally the power consumption by having a much less aggressive boosting behavior, which would also be terrible in games. Like, just imagine going from menu and then in game again. Oh god, I imagine some serious lags. Yikes. All right, let's go further.
Accurate, but unfortunately, we didn't get any other benchmarks that are proper.
Properly running cross. Oh god, no, just no, not wildlife. Are you mad? Okay, so 3D, for those who don't know, 3D Mark Wildlife is a mobile benchmark. It is created for the purpose of testing mobile phones. It's not really meant to use desktop GPUs, and obviously, by extension, it won't be able to completely utilize a desktop GPU regardless. So using that again is just, yeah, don't do that. Don't use Wildlife as a reference unless you want to test mobile devices. I mean, it's obviously dumb to use, non-optimized. It just goes completely against what he's saying, right? Where he's saying, oh, look, they're using benchmarks that's unoptimized, blah, blah. Now he's himself doing the exact same thing. He's using a mobile phone benchmark to prove that desktop GPUs run worse somehow, which is ridiculous. It's ridiculous. Oh my god. No, don't do that. Again, misleading again, or pretty sure he'd dig deep to find this. I don't know many who actually would want to run 3D Mark Wildlife on a desktop GPU, except maybe just for the funsies. I don't know. Just, yeah, this benchmark is completely irrelevant. So yeah, let's keep going.
Properly running, which there are a ton of them.
There's not a ton of them.
Maybe they meant games?
Oh god, Anthony, please, why do you go there? Why do you Anthony, why are you doing this to us? Oh, he will ramble around again about run games.
Getting into gaming, we see the same programs that are not running properly.
You seriously expect Dinus Tech Tips to actually run the handful of games and just somehow, let people think, oh, it's gonna run games well? Oh my god. The fact that I haven't watched the video, but I really hope that Linus Tech Tips just mentioned, oh, by the way, 99% of the games don't even run on the M1. If they don't, then again, oh god, no. Right. Let's proceed.
As in the previous video a month before that.
Oh yeah, this is actually going to be a fun fact. You see this number here? This Shadow of the Tomb Raider number, 201 FPS. I'm almost certain that the 201 FPS is not even the full potential of the 3090. It's probably a CPU bottleneck. Just pointing it out. Yeah.
running properly as in the previous video a month before that. This is a month and a half.
Okay, for those who are actually a little curious as to why is this FPS the same? CS:GO, once again World of Warcraft, is a pretty old game. It's based on the Source engine, which is originally from 2004. Yeah, it has been modified a little bit here to support DirectX 11, yada yada yada. However, the game is very, very, very CPU intensive, and the 100 FPS are basically there because that's the CPU bottleneck they have in this game. So the graphics card really doesn't make a difference, and this is pretty much in line with this. 10 cores and running at the frequencies they run. Same frames. That's what it is. Yeah. So probably not something Max is aware of because, you know, Apple shill doesn't really understand much about gaming anyways. I wouldn't expect him to know anything about games, ages, engines, and whatnot. He's probably going to complain about this, isn't he? He's probably like, oh, this is somehow false. All right.
Or maybe closer to 2 months since these laptops came out.
Oh, fun fact. If they actually had used a different graphics card, like an AMD card, which doesn't have the driver overhead problem in CSGO, they would have even more frames. just pointing it out.
But where is other optimized things that do work properly? For example, World of Warcraft that they mentioned.
World of Warcraft, once again, is a terrible, terrible benchmark due to the 200 frames cap on the engine anyway. So what the hell is it supposed to show us? We could take a laptop from 2013 and have those 200 frames and be like, look, I beat the M1. It's not going to tell us anything, really.
In the last video, they forgot to test, and it's clearly not included here at all, making the M1 Mac Pro just seem like they are pure garbage for gaming.
Because they are. Because alone for the fact that it doesn't run over 99% of the games already makes it pretty garbage for gaming. Objectively, I'm objectively saying this. It's not even a subjective opinion. It's just legitimate, just objective. The fact that you cannot run over 99% of the libraries of the games that actually exist already makes it a fucking terrible gaming device, whether you like it or not.
Performance.
Since we're looking for more ways the M1 Max can differentiate itself, there's one final ray of hope. The venerable...
Oh, Dolphin! Who doesn't know Dolphin? Amazing emulator. Emulates GameCube and Wii games. Such an amazing thing. Runs on mobile phones as well, taking your old nostalgia back, even with 4K graphics and whatnot. It's beautiful. Dolphin for the win.
Dolphin emulator.
And when they mention that they want to find something that works, they try out Dolphin emulator, which is interesting. Who's going to use that? And then
I take offense to that. Max, honestly, you want a war with me? You fucking criticize me for using my emulator to play my games? Just because you don't like it doesn't make it less viable, okay? I can already see, like, it's funny because he is literally judging you based on what you use. He is, look at him.
mention that they want to find something that works. They
Look at his fucking disgusting face.
try out Dolphin emulator.
Hey, look at him. He's judging you. For people who want to use a Dolphin emulator, right? It's like, dude, you want to use Dolphin emulator? You loser. That's the type of guy he is. He will judge you based on the programs you use. If something does not run good on the M1, in his mind, you are a fucking loser. That's literally what he's displaying right now. I'm actually disgusted right now. He is so... I hate Apple shills who will judge people based on their needs. Because their needs does not comply with what they think is great, they will automatically say that people are dumb for having these needs, which is ridiculous.
Which is interesting, who's going to use that? And then they say that it doesn't even use Metal. You have to use OpenGL, which hasn't been supported for years.
Yeah, whose fault is that? Yeah, Apple. Why don't you fucking support OpenGL better?
And then they show off performance that pretty much sucks.
Not really a surprise, is it?
Then we look at the Zephyrus again, and it's a slaughter.
The problem here is obviously because CPU. It's not even graphics card, it's again CPU. It's just, what do you expect? It's an ARM CPU, of course. It's going to get shit on by a desktop CPU in terms of emulating, you know, games, especially because the Dolphin emulator has been mostly, written optimized for, you guessed it, the x86 underscore 64 instruction set. So, surprise, not really.
This is where we're like, man, we have to say something, and I don't want.
You don't like that they take actual programs that people use? Yeah, how dare they? I would rather have a biased review showing me programs that nobody wants to use to make a point that M1 best shit ever. This is a good idea. That's what Linus Tech should aim for. Lie to the community, mislead them, and just tell them it's the best thing ever. Yeah, that's a good idea. Oh wait, no, that's a terrible idea. That's just awful.
Want to just show off numbers that we have. Obviously, we love these Macs.
Yeah, you love these Macs, all right.
We love these machines. We think they're great. So what about another PC guy like Matthew Moniz?
I don't really know him. He looks like a nice guy though.
He compared the M1 Max to a custom PC using the brand new Alder Lake 12900
What?
K with a desktop 3080 and showed off the performance.
I generally don't like making.
Wow. Oh, that 3080. Is this thing getting enough air? It looks like it's so close. I don't have this case. I don't know about this case, but it looks like it might choke a little bit. I don't know. If someone has this case and knows more about it, I would like to know, just out of curiosity, if the GPU is actually choking like this or if it's fine. Because otherwise I would just, have it turned around and then, breathe the air in which it's supposed to. Like this, I think it might get a little hot. Just me though. I might be wrong. I don't know the actual distance. Maybe it's further away than it actually seems like. So we'll see.
Laptop versus desktop videos, but this year has been really different. These MacBook Pros have exceeded our expectations.
Really haven't. They were actually well within expectations. We kind of knew that the M1 Max and upgrading the M1s is not going to do much. And predictably, they really haven't, because at a certain point, they just don't scale very well when it comes to power consumption. So there's only so much you can do. It's a little,
Take a look at Blender and how it's outperforming the previous best CPU.
Yeah, but again, it's very misleading, because again, why would you use the CPU if the GPU does this? Why? Oh yeah, let's turn on the CPU because I'm a moron. So he's talking about how the M1, right? These MacBook Pros are just, it's better than this one. Okay, let's start with the fact that this one is significantly more expensive than this one, and then let's point out that you can go 3.5 minutes if you want, but you can also just turn on the GPU and get 27 seconds. Yeah, not a good show right now. Not good. So again, it's just a demonstration as to why you should never. Okay, not never. Maybe, who knows? Maybe some magic compatibility thing is gonna happen, but I don't think so. So yeah, I mean, this just, again, you should not use this for Blender. Just don't do that. This is just a BMV scene. Just imagine having an entire house or something with all kinds of high detail stuff. Oh god, the rendering differences will be massive. Don't use CPU. Don't do that. It's like using software mode and emulator. Just don't do that.
Alder Lake is beating it out, but is still super impressive. He also shows other tests like after.
And I don't know what this Puget bench is. I don't know how relevant it is, but I'm just gonna take it at face value, I guess. So, good job, M1. I don't know. Also, most powerful PC laptop if plugged in. That's a lie. That's just lie. There's laptops that are significantly more powerful. Namely the ones that actually have a desktop CPU in them and even higher wattage TDP graphics cards. So yeah, but still, I mean, it's fine. It's good. Good job, Media Encoder. Media Engine. Good job.
After Effects, which was just updated to use graphics and to be optimized, and look at how close this laptop performs even to.
So this is kind of where I want to point out that it's a little weird, isn't it? You kind of notice the difference here is getting quite large, and this is probably because of the the media encoder or media engine, whatever. It is really good at accelerating certain tasks. So what I think is happening here in this, because as far as I read, the Budget Bench, or however you want to pronounce it, tests different things and gives it a score. And I think that what happens here is that the M1 Max scores really high in things that the media engine actually, accelerates. So I think that's what's going on right now. So I mean, it is what it is, I suppose. It's kind of misleading if it just does one thing well, not everything. But I do not know. I do not know how Budget Bench is exactly structured, but I would never take one benchmark and just put the numbers on that. As far as I know, desktops do export way faster than M1s. Actually, not way faster, but faster. But there's also a little, or rather a massive caveat, which I'm going to go to later for those who actually consider the M1 for video editing, which is, I mean, the M1 is an option for video editing if you only do video editing with specific software suite that is.
And then for graphics rendering in DaVinci Resolve for 4K, not 1080p, the M1 Max laptop smokes both the Alder Lake and the 11th gen system with the...
Again, given... I mean, okay, to be honest, this just tells me fuck all. It says DaVinci Resolve Studio Lower is better. I have... How long is the clip? What resolution, bitrate? I have no data whatsoever. So at this point, I'm not even gonna really look at this as a benchmark, because it literally doesn't tell me anything. It just doesn't. Also, I have never seen even like the M1 Pro being this much slower than the M1 Max. I've never seen this before. So this already is weird to me. Something here seems sketch to me, like really sketch. Because as far as I know, when it comes to actual rendering times of DaVinci Resolve, these two should be very similar. Yeah, so I don't know.
3080 for exporting. He also shows compiling code, which is what a lot of people do these laptops, not just gaming, almost nobody does, and then video editing, which it does well in. What about compiling code? What about logic? And here, the MacBook almost matched up with this brand new...
And this is, again, very misleading. So first of all, I am my job description is system developer. I am a software engineer, so this is my specialty. The performance will obviously greatly vary depending on what compiler you use and what language you write in. Some are more, some are very good at using threads at compiling things. Others are not as great. It'll really depend on a lot of things, and the key here is optimization. Now, because macOS is Unix based, and guess what? Firefox is optimized for? Yay, Unix based systems. It would be more fair to actually compare the custom PC to let's say in a Linux environment, because that's most of what most programmers is probably gonna dirk around in is probably Linux. So there, the scores will drastically change once again. I mean, my 8-core AMD CPU is way faster than this, but again, I'm compiling Firefox. I did compile Firefox in Linux, so it makes sense. Matthew Moniz also mentioned that on his video, that you should take the compilation here with a grain of salt. I think he actually mentioned this on this video right here, where he compares those two notebooks. Let's see if we can find it.
More than one OS installed, you can have more developer. I feel like a lot more people are going to appreciate the MacBook Pro over the Windows laptop, unless you have to have more than one OS installed.
He doesn't mention it here, but it's somewhere in this video. Basically, he's I have to disagree with him though. I don't think a lot of developers will appreciate M1 because it's too expensive. It's too expensive what it is. Most programmers don't really need that much CPU horsepower. The only real thing they use is RAM, and this is mostly because you cache a lot and you do a lot of hot swap. So RAM is the most important thing. And you can get a PC with 32 or 64 gigs of RAM relatively cheap. So yeah, I don't know. I don't think any developer will be happy spending $5,000 or $3,000 just to get 32 gigs of RAM or more. It's just not good. It's not a good option for developers at all. I don't think so. Not for that little bit more performance. So yeah, this is something that has to be mentioned though. As I said, once you put Linux on it, the custom PC and obviously the other custom PC will be way better. And once you use AMD, it will be even more of a stomp. So yeah, in this case, again, Firefox compile test, it's very biased towards Unix-based systems, aka Linux and macOS. So again, take this with a grain of salt. However, what has to be said here that the M1 actually performs pretty decent. The standard M1, if only it had an option with 32 gigs of RAM and would be a little bit cheaper, it would actually have been a really good, solid option. Sadly, not the case. So yeah.
High-end Alder Lake system and a desktop, Tomb Raider does not scale properly at all. Does not scale properly
at all. Okay.
Compiling code. It is crazy. And with that, he showed how Shadow Tomb Raider does not scale properly at all.
Oh my god.
And when we look at a properly optimized game like World of Warcraft,
God, this guy's so painful to listen at. So again, obviously, as I told you, the World of Warcraft 200 FPS cap. Yay. Again, Shadow of Mordor, it's an absolute fucking disgusting stump. Shadow of the Tomb Raider, it's less of a stump, but still a massive stump. And obviously, Deus Ex Mankind is again pretty massive stump. World of Warcraft, it can, it's a shitty laptop from 2013 can do 200 frames. It's not really an achievement at this point. So yeah, it's just, what do you want me to say? I mean, obviously, Max does not understand the fact that this game has an FPS cap. So he thinks, oh, look, it's like 3080. Oh, God, no. Right. Soft cap of 200 frames per second. Right, let's proceed.
the performance is close to a full-on
No, it's not. That's not.
desktop 3080, let alone a laptop one. And as you guys know, if we look at other benchmarks that are cross-platform, for example, 3D Mark's new
No, it's not. It's a mobile benchmark. It cannot utilize a desktop GPU properly. You bitched about the fact that I use unoptimized benchmarks. What are you doing right now? You're using a mobile benchmark on desktop GPUs. Of course, the M1 Max is going to perform similar to a 3080 on a fucking benchmark like Wildlife Extreme, because Wildlife Extreme does not use technology that can actually utilize the 3080. So of course it makes sense that you will have similar scores. It's not really that much of a surprise. And the thing is, a 3080 laptop is nowhere near a 3080 desktop as well. This is also something you don't really understand either. So yeah, it's not looking good. Oh my god.
Wildlife Extreme, the M1
Yes, it's same as a 3050 Ti roughly.
Max MacBook gets very close to a nice 3080 gaming laptop in terms of performance. And then of course, Linus Tech Tips, they didn't mention anything about unplugged performance, which it goes down dramatically if you care about portability.
So this is actually a point that I think is invalid personally, because you don't really do extensive work on the go. You don't ever want to do that. I can't think of a single situation where I was like, oh yeah, let's just play, I don't know, like, not even Counter-Strike, it has to be like a AAA title like Cyberpunk. Oh, I want to play Cyberpunk on this train with my fucking trackpad. Yes, that's what I want to do. It's a big yikes. It's very misleading because it's such a niche situation. I can't really think of anyone who would even want to do that. I personally would never do that. And it's also something in the comment section which is being discussed as well. Oh, but on battery and so, but who would want to do that? Who wants to, it's weird. I personally don't see it. I don't see why this should matter in the slightest. But again, I mean, I suppose it's a point. I mean, it doesn't, the MacBook doesn't lose performance on battery. It's true. That is true. But how useful it is, I don't know.
And when they talked about battery life, conveniently, the Windows laptops were not included in the
I mean, if you care about battery life, you would you would go for a Dell anyways, which is currently the battery king. It even beats the M1 MacBooks quite significantly. Even the M1, the original M1, which has the best battery life, also gets, kind of shat on by the Dell. So I think it's Dell 2-in-1 9510 for those who are interested. So yeah, I mean, it is what it is. Again, it's kind of the benchmark here is also like a little weird because it's like YouTube playback 4 ticks brightness. It's like, yeah, I don't know many who would just stare at YouTube at 4 ticks brightness for 20 hours. So yeah, I would rather use a different benchmark suit, but if you do that, the battery life will sink down to roughly 15 to 16 hours, which, don't get me wrong, is still really nice, but it's not 20. So yeah,
there at all, only in the tests where it actually did better. And then when they say it costs less than half the price,
oh yeah, and something that should be fair, to be fair as well, if you take a high performance laptop, it will almost always perform shit in terms of battery life. So that is a valid point. That is actually a valid point. Just saying. But if you only focus on battery life, then Dell would do better. That's the thing I want to say before people be like, but the Zephyrus has shit battery life. I'm not going to argue there. Definitely true. Definitely true.
Just makes it seem like the MacBook's a horrible deal when you don't even factor in the display with
it is a horrible deal.
1600 nits, the speaker.
It's not 1600 nits. That's peak. That's peak brightness, and only if you use the XDR thing. If you use normal SDR, it's around 480 to 500 nits, which is still very respectable. If you use the weird XDR, HDR, whatever the fuck that is, then it can go up to like sustained 1000 nits, which is more realistically around 800. It's still a good display though. It's not going to beat any OLED gaming laptop though. That has to be said. I mean, you can't really beat OLED, so it's what it is.
The amazing battery life that is shockingly good.
Yeah, battery life is not shockingly good, but it is good. I wouldn't say shockingly. Even the Dell, which is the longest battery life laptop, I don't think it's shocking. It's still very good. Don't get me wrong, but I wouldn't describe it as shocking. The only point he made, which makes a lot of sense, is the speaker. Given the form factor, the speakers on the MacBook are the best. Now, before you quote me here, given the form factor, right? The form, thin and light. In terms of thin and lights, the MacBook does the best in terms of speaker. Now, if we look at all notebooks, obviously the thick gaming laptops absolutely smoke the MacBook. It's not even going to be close. Let's say my MSI GT73 is going to absolutely annihilate whatever MacBook comes across, because it actually has a huge as, or rather huge as, I mean, it's huge and huge, but it's a large subwoofer, large speakers, a lot of depth, a lot of power in them, very loud. Yeah, and there are several notebooks like that, such as if you want to go full berserk, obviously the Acer Predator 21X, I think that's the name of it, which has 2 subwoofers and 4 speakers, and good lord, it's a monster. So yeah, obviously there are a lot of that, but again, they're really, really thick, so obviously they have the space for really good speakers. Again, in terms of form factor, I do think the MacBook's speakers are impressive. Would I pay $5,000 for that? Absolutely fucking no. I would rather use my Bluetooth speaker, because let's face it, even the MacBook is not going to beat my cheap JBL Bluetooth speaker. The Bluetooth speaker is still gonna fucking annihilate the MacBook. It's not even gonna be close. So yeah, has to be mentioned, I guess.
Everything else that it offers and all these other tests
yeah,
as well. Just
I'll come to it later.
Seems like the M1 Max is basically
something much more akin to the RTX 3050 Ti, much less the RTX 3080 we were promised.
Once again, we love you guys, and if something is, check it out. We just working. Let's just not include.
Yes, because again, So I'm gonna too long, or rather not too long. Didn't read. Actually, I'm gonna do some sort of too long to read. Basically, it's very clear. Max is an Apple shill. He doesn't really give a shit about what's true or not. He just wants to make Apple seem way better than it actually is. The M1 does very well in very specific niche situations. I'm not going to deny that. In terms of if you want to compile anything, that's Unix based, the M1 will do really good. It will be very competitive too in terms of performance, which is something we can't say for the last generations. However, the price tag makes it really difficult to recommend. Sure, the screen is nice. Sure, the speakers are nice, but the main issue with the M1, which I really feel is the absolute deal breaker, is the fact that it just is so unreliable in terms of if it's going to run something properly or not. See, a lot of people watching this video are probably people on the fence who are considering, well, should I get an M1 for, my future work? This video is not for actual professionals, because actual professionals know exactly what they need. They know which tools they run, and they immediately know, okay, the M1 is not going to run my tools properly, so fuck the M1. However, people here are maybe students or soon to be, like, maybe you just graduated and you're now looking for a professional machine to, get into professional work. The M1 is never going to be a good choice based on the fact that it's so inconsistent with what it does. And even if your current tech stack is going to be sufficient for the M1, you still have the problem that if your company someday, wants to introduce a new product, that a new application that just does not really run well or is not supported by the M1, you can't just say no. You actually have to deal with it, or you're gonna get fired, because you're not getting flexible, and you're not getting very interesting for the company. And the same goes if you lose your job or want to switch your job. If the tech stack is not compatible with the M1, which chances are rather high because the M1 just does not really run very well on a lot of applications, then you're just putting yourself into a position, like in a really awkward position, where you spend $5,000 for basically a worthless notebook. It's not particularly great, given the price range, given the price tag of this thing. I do think that Apple should just stop pretending they're professional devices. They should stop misleading people and just focus on something more affordable. Making an M1 MacBook that's actually affordable is going to be, a student's dream, because the M1 is really good at basic things. It's very good at web browsing, very good at Facebook and watching YouTube videos, some casual video editing, and all these kind of things. It does very, very nice. But it really sucks once you want to use it, once you actually are a power user, once you want to, use a real tech stack, software suite, whatever, you really have to rely on certain things. Now, when you are a professional, because a lot of people don't really understand what the focus is, right? And I'm talking here now as a software engineer here. The main thing you should care about, rather, there are three things you should care about, and number one is stability and flexibility. That's going to be the very first thing. You want your machine to be as flexible and just as reliable as humanly possible. That is going to be the very first thing you want to look for in terms of laptop. Can it do everything that I want it to do? And can it do it reliably without it, killing itself after 3-5 years? Again, a thing that the M1 really does is kill itself after 3 to 5 years due to the soldered on SSD. It's a sad fact. It is what it is. Number two is security. You don't want even if your device gets stolen, you don't want it to be compromised. You don't want your data to, get around. So something like, some sort of security that makes sure that nobody can just, log into your PC as easily is very, very much needed. Now, again, with MacBooks, yeah, they're not very good at security at all. If I wanted to, I could just, go into recovery and change your password and just log in. It's that simple. Windows has, as far as I know, more, stuff working for them. Encryption and, like a lot of things like encryption and security based on the TPM module and all these kind of things that it makes it much harder to get into the data, if not even impossible. So very nice to have there. I do not know if Mac finally has something. I mean, they talked about security and T2 chip, but I'm pretty sure, if I remember correctly, the T2 chip has been breached already. There's vulnerabilities that have been found. So yeah, not very secure either. And number 3, the last one, is going to be performance, and that's going to be only on number 3 again, due to the rather toy cost kind of behavior of the Mac, like the M1s. Like, if a program is going to run well or not, it's absolutely coin toss. So it's not that great. I mean, it is what it is. Now, in the end, would I recommend M1? No, I really wouldn't. There's a reason why they're on the used market. There's a reason why there's actually a lot of M1s on the used market, given their age, because people have realized it's not a good deal. It's just a lot of hype, a lot of misleading from people like Max Tech, just, abusing the fact that some people are just not that into tech. And it's a shame, really. It really is a shame. So, yeah. I think that's it from my side. I hope you learned something, and on to the next.